So, yeah, you're so wrong. I go wrong here.
Okay. This is like a very intense masterclass or something. Say your name one more time. I'm sorry. I'm looking at the
Manuela. Minay.
Okay. Deindustrialized landscapes.
Yeah.
Can you describe that a little bit? Does that mean like rural or like post-industrial or?
In textile industries or big factories along the rivers.
Oh, so like Rust Belt, sort of like obsolete made. Interesting. There's a lot. I think like that's actually a lot of the subculture of gaming 3D too. Like I was looking last night at some assets, and there's so many assets that are like, yeah, industrial machinery and things like that. So let's see. We presented this, like some of the cases that we based some of this proposal on in a panel the other day. And so I have like a small video that I made that just looks at some technologies. So it was my idea that first I would just show some of that just to kind of give you an idea like where we're coming from and some of the different variations and stuff. And then I think because it's you, it's like maybe you can just give us an idea of what you're interested in, and we can just, you know, go into detail with that, and, you know, sort of be like, I don't know, consultants for you. I guess, you know, it's like, let's make the most of our time here. Okay, let me find this. Did you get a chance to play around with any photogrammetry apps?
Yes. If you tell me what I have to download, I can check.
Do you have a smartphone?
Yes, also my computer. So what is best?
Is it an Android or an iPhone?
Android.
Because right, Misha, there's problems, right? Because I'm not problems, but like limitations, because Android doesn't have LiDAR. But they can, I mean, you can still do it traditionally, right? Does Trinio or any of them like Scaniverse work without LiDAR?
I'm not sure about that one, but I think it would just work with a selection of pictures. However, there is one app that works on Android for 3D scanner. It's called 3D Live Scanner. It's in beta access. It looks like this. It wouldn't be a very as high quality scan as Trinio, but it would still work, I guess, for just quick prototyping and just experiencing how
yeah, I mean, before the iPhone had the LiDAR potential, we had to do it all with like PhotoScan Pro or something where we just loaded in a sequence of images that overlapped in certain ways. So it's not that you need that. It's just, it makes it ridiculously easy, you know, because with your iPhone or with a smartphone that has LiDAR, then it's like you don't have to go through like camera models and lens models and sort of calibrate everything and then process the images and do a lot of point cloud stuff. It sort of does a lot for you. I mean, that's just mainly for like the ease of being able to scan anything in like your environment. But it's not required. Okay, so I'm gonna just show this movie. And I will sort of play it and stop it as we go here. So yeah, uncommon landscapes, we're looking at new tools. They're case studies, some of them, and they vary. Some of them are specific things that we use, others are sort of explorations, some are projects that we were related to. And I think that one of the things is that we begin to see like digital spaces as like an unfamiliar terrain that we can approach like an anthropologist. So like, how do we put ourselves in a position where we can look at these digital structures and like begin to query or like critically interrogate some of the infrastructures that are below them. Like when we look at this video, it's a collection of 50 streets that are named after the freedom fighter Patrice Lumumba, across 48 countries and 4 continents. And you see like a lot of these disjunctures where there's no infrastructure, and a lot where some is different than others. And so as an anthropologist, we find this kind of interesting as a way to begin to like look at the world, you know, be observers in the digital space. And this is a long time ago. This is from 2017. So these images are 2016 to some even go older than that. And we can sort of contrast that with like this idea or these projects that are digital twin city projects. So this is a digital twin city project of Singapore. So it's a literal map, like a 3D model of the entire city of Singapore. So it's used not just for, you know, measurements like it shows here, but also for like real-time traffic flows, industrial processes, crime, you know, all kinds of different things. So here you can see a different one that is the digital city project of Shanghai. And this one's actually created an Unreal Engine, which is a gaming engine that Misha works a lot with. And it's also like the engine that they use for movies and television, like The Mandalorian and Disney movies and stuff. So it has a pretty easy like setup to get into it, but it's fairly complex. You can see like you can hook all kinds of data to it too. So there's like sensors in Singapore that have live data that then are sort of attached to this model, 3D model. So it becomes like a mirror sort of city in digital space, like in the metaverse. And so like this camera system, it uses actual cameras for color and for texture, but it uses LiDAR too. Like I believe there's probably a LiDAR, like up in there, a LiDAR module that's using lasers to measure everything. And so that's what the iPhone has that is sort of an advantage. So like this is my kitchen, right? And it took me like, you know, 5 minutes to scan this. It's sort of partial materiality, but it's like a really easy way to begin to replicate things into the digital world. And then, you know, we can contest them or change them or alter them in those sort of ways. See this, it's the same technology, it's photogrammetry that's used to make this model of the Palmyra Arch, for instance, right? So like a series of images that are analyzed, and then this, you know, that same model was used to 3D print this Palmyra Arch. This is in Trafalgar Square. Sort of like an extension of heritage, right? That can go on tour a little bit. And this is a project that I guided. This is a student of mine, where she looked at Instagram selfies from the Louvre. So this is the Louvre, and she took, I think, almost 200 Instagram selfies and then processed those with photogrammetry. So what she was left with was like the data of what the camera sees, like what is being recorded, and sort of like what isn't being looked at. So she modeled these sort of all of the things that the camera was looking at, the gaze of the camera, and then 3D printed these and installed them in an exhibition in Sweden. So so here you see like this is the extent of what the camera sees. So we have this sort of weird like abstraction of mediation of like tools that just to begin to look at like what are we looking at and what does it mean and how do we use these things. So this is just kind of, you know, this is more just theoretical stuff, but just that we're using these sort of tools as a way to sort of make community in a way. This is just looking at like common digital infrastructures that lead to sort of standardization and things that we can expect. We could see this white vinyl as being like a sort of a community-based representation. This was an app that looked at some of these global styles. So when you see like materiality in the digital world, we see a lot of like entanglement, the availability of digital assets, of fonts and images, sort of, yeah, lead to like a hybrid materiality in both places. Meme generators. We can see things like this, which is a butcher in Antwerp that used the Chicago Bulls logo for their, so it becomes a sort of a act of resemiosis, like looking at things that exist and how we can change meanings of materiality, and contest it in a way. So this is LeBron James, using this Trump hat as a way to call to attention some inequalities. And by using these sort of materials, and I think it's the same thing in the digital, in this completely digital world, like when we get into Unreal or Mozilla, by actually making these things, interacting with them, we create ways to like mediate our futures and change the way that we interact with the world. And so it's, I find it to be kind of profound. So these things can go into transmedial narratives, they can go into intercontextualization, but they're really about like how humans make difference and distinction through the use of assets that are already around, like nostalgia. Okay, Virgil Abloh we consider like material speculation. So it's about taking things that exist and recontextualizing them or challenging them to give them new meaning or like a critical voice in a way. And so it's just playing with our competencies and our expectations. And yeah, the interesting thing I think that Lemke says is that these are literal tools that we can sort of prefigure new worlds with. Okay, so when we're dealing with speculation, and this is we've done a lot of work in speculation with students and with like municipalities and other organizations. Catalan can talk more to that too, but what the goal or where we move towards is this sort of future thinking that's in like a possible realm, not in an impossible realm that becomes too fantasy based. We don't like have speculations about unicorn people or things like that are too far out because we want to look at social implications, and we don't do things that are too close that are like my individual like personal future, like I am going to learn to. So we try to remove the person from it too, so there's not human bias. This is another version of that same diagram. It's kind of funny. And so the important thing is when we're speculating is that we're connecting to some sort of materiality that exists. This is what we'll do in a little while. This is Misha's low poly sort of living room in Mozilla Hubs. And Misha, you were using this before COVID, I know, right? But like during COVID, you just started, was it just me or you used it a lot more, or no, I just saw it more?
I think I used it before just to for their very simple 3D engine where you can just put a bunch of stuff together and immediately get to explore it in multiplayer. And that's an unprecedented ability of this service to just put a lot of people in one space together online that no other service has. But during COVID, it became irreplaceable because then we needed to rethink how do we interact online with each other and what does it mean to experience space, virtually when we were confined.
And one of the things I think is really remarkable about what Misha's done in this spaces is that these are students that are actually working and actually developing like ideas for speculation while they're in this space. And what it does is like when I say, oh, sorry, I sort of going too quickly through here. It creates a sort of unfamiliarity that everyone experiences. So the way that I always saw it was like the sort of the Zen tea house ritual where everyone has to like bend down and be humbled to come in a room at the same level. And so like no one feels real comfortable, and it's always really confusing a little bit, that space. And so without it untethers our attachment to like materiality for today and tomorrow. So I think that for me, it really helps, especially students, to be freed up to begin to think more openly. And Let's see here. Whoa, sorry. And so we're doing like a prototyping and research through design. So we're engaging with processes of making things as a way to form sort of critical opinions, or we'll look at different relationships, different implications. Okay, now we go into more specific speculation. So this was a project that we did with the city of Eindhoven and the Design Academy in Eindhoven a number of years ago. But it was I don't know, Kathleen, it was one of the first large or direct sort of generation of ideas and future states for like a municipality, I think, that we did with students. And so it was about privacy and data in the civic sense and individually, and sort of what could become of those futures. And so it didn't, the important thing wasn't to have it be very literal, but it was to step beyond some of the easy immediate outcomes and sort of project into more challenging or outlandish ideas. And from my understanding, it was very successful with the municipality, and we'll get into some more municipal stuff in a minute. So some of the things I think that I've found are useful are like object-oriented ontology, and I'll talk about that in a minute, about how we can use objects and use sort of the positioning of an object to look at different ways that we can understand value. And then speculative ethnography, so like speculating about those certain firsthand experiences, and of course, getting into visual and material ideology, alien phenomenology, sort of connected to this. Sorry if I'm like going really fast, or if I don't make sense here, stop me. So one of the big things that and I'm sort of saying all this, but it's not just me. It's like, these other, Misha and Kathleen are doing a lot of this. Nonlinear thinking has become like a big thing that is one of the objectives in the municipal work. Because one of the problems, at least from what I understand, is that people in the office, especially people who are elected by like government officials who are elected, they have a hard time with thinking past like buying paper clips for next month. And so in order to challenge or have them understand sort of how their decisions might have further life implications, we try to work with the municipality to develop ways to speculate and to think broadly. And so it's trying to get them to think more non-linearly. And so in this workshop, we had 8 different scenarios, speculative scenarios, that dealt with issues that are sort of topical now, but build off materiality that is in the city and that could be, somewhat real, but gave a sort of opening to understand or to begin to explore what that means. So the groups, what happens is the groups choose these scenarios. There was a number of them. And then every person has to choose an object and then begin to discuss the object's aspirations for the future in this scenario. So that's a way that we're forcing people outside of like their own human perspective in a way. And we have found that, if we allow the people to speculate on their own individual future, it becomes really biased and like self-absorbed. But if we say like you can't include yourself, like it has to be, a projection that doesn't include you, and thus like some of the object-oriented ontology and object-based things, that the personal biases are kind of left behind there. Yeah, and so at the end, I mean, the result of this one was they came up with like small narratives of the future through these objects, and then read them, which I thought was interesting. In the next iteration, I think we're going to directly include a little bit more AI, which we'll take a look at a little bit today. So we generated some AI images for them because we wanted them to have a visualization that wasn't fixed, but it was like still had to make sense of in a way. So this was about animals creating energy for people's houses, and like worms that eat plastic, and home offices that become gardens. Yes, and so I'm almost done here with this little soliloquy. But then this last sort of comment, because if we start to look at AI frameworks, is that we can begin to sort of query or use AI frameworks as a way to get a sense of like almost like an outsider sense of like, how do humans use images, or like what do images say, and image like ecosystems that produce mediation say about humans, and say about like our ability to think with images. And so these are some generated images from a different AI called Midjourney. And these are a few variations down when they're very simpler prompts. Like this prompt is classical. So you see it's combined like some female figure with like a cello or something, and like, like columns here. So it sort of is a weird amalgamation of like these visual traits. This one is history. This is revolution. This is authoritarianism. Republican. Local architecture. Global storefront architecture. Peace walls. Belfast troubles. Visual anthropology, which is kind of it's kind of shocking and shameful a little bit to see that come out. These are just like generations of animal-based facades, weird shiny unicorns, just things I was having it make up toys that don't exist. Oops, it's going backwards now. This is a Jeff Koons sculpture of a pigeon with a grandmother dress. Smoke and lasers and exploding confetti unicorns. This prompt was Mars rovers making love. This is about basketball on Mars. This is a pointillist painting of a point cloud. Elvis on Mars. Some humanistic artwork. Okay, so that's just like a whole big brain dump of lots of stuff that sort of talks about materiality, I think, and some of our ideas about it. Any questions thus far? I see we got Nikhil 2 here. We have 2 participants. Anything thus far?
I was wondering how can I use these technologies?
Yes. So what we were going to do is Misha's going to bring us into, or, that was our plan, is to bring us into Mozilla Hub so we can experience it and just take a look at just some of the, they're not, I don't know, the techniques, but just how easy it is to sort of place things in there and begin to play around with it. The experience probably will be a little different on like Zoom than it is like on Mozilla Hubs, because it's really sort of confronting on that platform. Yes, and so I think the idea is we'll go in Mozilla Hubs, we'll take a look at some of the things we can do in there, and looking at like available assets and photogrammetry to put things in there. And we wanted to also, Misha is going to take us into Unreal real quickly. And I have a number of different AI frameworks. So I have like textual AI, where we could generate sort of stories and things too. We thought that we could like demo some of these sort of routines that we go through in a way. Kathleen, or Misha, do you have anything else to add? I feel like I'm taking up a lot of the air here.
No, it's great for me. I'm just preparing all of the techniques and assets in the meantime to let us play around with
You're
them.
like busy in the background.
Exactly.
Okay. Let's see here.
I got this. This is what you told me to download.
Okay. Yeah, we can, I mean, even like, I mean, we could do it now, but maybe in a little while we could take a little break and you could try to scan a couple things and we could, you know what I mean, if you wanted to. Because then it's a lot of those applications will export it to a format that we can sort of use immediately. Okay.
Would you like to go into Mozilla Hubs?
I think so.
All right.
You are a participant.
I'm just going to send you guys an invite. So in the Zoom chat, you will see an invite to a Mozilla Hub space to my old living room. I actually moved houses since then. So that's even more interesting. It's the room that no longer exists, only in Mozilla.
Yeah.
And another interesting thing I think about going in Mozilla Hubs is you have to choose an avatar, and it's like none of them are ever really good. They're always really like kind of ridiculous, and so it also
yeah, you have to kind of put in yourself this Mozilla corporate identity for the time being, but I think the space is so crazy and explicit in its own way that it's just
Want to be.
Right.
Oh, nice.
okay. So I'm in there now.
maybe we have to mute either on Zoom, either on Mozilla Hub, so we don't create too much echo.
Why not?
So
Hey,
it's,
Ryan.
it's like an old school game where you can use the WASD as like to traverse around.
You can also right click and it will create a teleport ray. And when you release the right click, you're going to just, be traversed to that point.
You can say hello.
Or you could also press G and then you enable fly mode
Well, okay.
and fly everywhere.
And then you can move about the figures with
so the nice thing also is that and these aren't things I think that we started out with like having be objectives, but like there's a really interesting level of like anonymity and like mediation with all these weird avatars. And sometimes like we would even forget like which student was which a little bit, you know, because it's hard to recognize people. And in some ways that it was helpful, I think. Oh, is that a little wall you're putting in there or something? Is this?
Yeah, you can also throw it.
Somebody else also was the fox. There are 2 foxes. There are 2 foxes. No.
Yeah, the interesting thing in Mozilla Hubs as well is that it's interlinked with a bunch of services like YouTube and Vimeo, and they have their own editor, and you can also upload custom models and things like that. And it makes it so interesting to modify the spaces. So sometimes you find yourself in those very I don't know, default looking, something that Mozilla has created yourself, but you also have a freedom to fully customize it to whatever you want it to be, and also vandalize it. They actually give you tools to vandalize the space, or well, for example, you can have a virtual pen, which allows you to spray paint on surfaces like this with a little ray.
Oh, it might be frozen here. Too many AI framework windows open. I had a problem signing with DALI, so I didn't want to close the window.
It's interesting that everybody chose a fox. I chose
how do you jump up?
I just recommend pressing G on your keyboard, and that would enable a fly mode. And then you can just with WASD or maybe or arrow keys on your keyboard, and then with your left mouse click and the and just dragging the camera around, you can fly around much more freely. So welcome to my old living room that no longer exists. I think I used the same 3D scanning software on Android to capture this. And then during the first lockdown in the Netherlands, I invited all of our students with Ryan and Catalina to spend a day here at my virtual space and present whatever they were working on at the time. And it was very interesting because we had to kind of overcome the complexity of the interface and the clumsiness of this digital interaction to find a way to communicate. But in the end, I think it was quite interesting.
I mean, and one of the, so this is obviously really low res, right? And I think it's really great as like a decontextualized experience. One of the things that I was interested in doing, but you can imagine that if you have actual like scanned objects in here, for instance, if we had, like the 11 participants and everyone had an interior object from their home, as like an anthropologist, we could begin to look at like, how do we read these objects, or these sort of artifacts in this way that they're disconnected from everything. And so for me, that's really interesting to be able to, challenge those things or exploit them. And one of the things I think that we were really interested in, especially in the context of Belfast, was that, again, this is like Mozilla Hubs is online, so it's more low poly. But when we get into like Unreal, we can have a very, very, very realistic representation of the physical world. And like, if you have something like the peace wall, we can just like fly over it, So I mean, like there's very, it sounds kind of ridiculous and matter of fact, but it's a kind of a profound way to look at that difference. And as well, we can say like, as an anthropologist and as an ethnographer, as someone who looks at practices in specific localities, we can model sort of different futures. Like I can make part of a wall that is broken up by a cafe or a laundromat or something else, and we can actually look at that and sort of perform, like these virtual ethnographies, right? We can put people in there and we can start to come to some sort of understanding of what that would mean for a human, and communities and stuff. And again, it's not like we're not talking about like the probability of that happening, but more different implications for like different future states in a way. Does that make sense? I feel like sometimes I'm very confusing when I say stuff like that.
No, it makes sense, I think. Well, at least to me, it does.
Oh, so you already have a little wall.
So
it's a canned asset that I download from a free place. I don't mess around in here, so I don't know how can you can change the size and stuff, I'm assuming somehow. Right?
If you hold spacebar, then you're going to have a little gizmo to we can also clone it, for example, or you can modify it, rotate it.
So we can like put a wall in the middle of the room. We can say like, what happens when we create a wall in the middle of the room.
I think I can check. I think if you hold.
It's kind of a very tilted wall right yeah, turning things into axes is weird. You got to find the exact point that you can do it. Oh no,
Yeah,
where'd it
because
go?
an axis, I think you threw it. But there is also such thing as gravity, which I think is really interesting. So I can anchor an object to actually have gravity, so I can pick up a wall and I can throw it on the ground. I don't know if you can see it. I don't know where you are, right?
I'm way
Trying to-
outside.
Oh, you flew outside of it.
So, I mean, we're just sort of, you know, playing around a little bit, but we just wanted to show that, for instance, if we wanted to create some sort of, so if this is a cohesive interior space and we say what we want to explore what sort of walls do, you know, to communication or what it means to divorce things, then we can set up a small model like that and get in there, you know, and feel it a little bit, even to the point where when we get into like things like Unreal, we can generate these hyper realistic models of the world that that become ridiculously realistic. So I don't have an image of it right now, but another student of ours who we advised used Unreal and used like a platform and used audio and like Twitter and things, and basically it was a protest setup that you were experiencing, and you either were like the protester or a police person or an emergency services person, and you could tweet like the like a thematic, like a theme that the protest would be based on, and it would show up on signs and things, and the platform you're on would like shake when people threw bottles and stuff. So it was like it really engaged like this idea of digital subjectivity in a way, and ways that we can yes, sort of replicate or simulate firsthand experiences that we wouldn't normally have. It's a very big house you have now. All right.
Everything changes with perspective, right?
That's probably opening up a different room entirely.
Okay, because I wanted to try with this other scenario. So,
Hi, this is Nikhil. I have a question.
Mhm.
It like when I entered this space, it reminded me of the potential to create alternate worlds, and it reminded me of reading fiction, speculative fiction, where you're trying to you're immersed in a alternate world with different governing principles. Let's put it that way. And I'm curious about the way you use the word futures, or and how it connects with speculation. Is it similar to the example I gave, like speculative fiction and having these different governing principles, or how do you relate to just futurity? You know, I'm just curious.
Yeah, I mean, I think I mean, if I don't, I mean, do you anyone want to take it on? I mean, it's probably different for us. But I mean, for us individually, have probably different perspectives on it. But I do think that it's similar to what you're saying, that it, like, I mean, we can almost imagine speculation as is similar to like an AI process, right? Like AI is like looking at all of the possibilities, but like really complex, like nonlinear possibilities where every possibility is weighted with every other possibility, you know. But what we're doing in speculation is just sort of sending a line out to one of those and developing it in much more detail. And it is about those different like governing principles, you know, you could say. I mean, that's why we're not interested in like giving people wings so much and stuff like that. We try to tether it to something that exists, because those like governing principles become sort of the implications of like this future state in a way. I think like, especially with the municipality work, it's not like ultimately focused on that future, but it's to give people tools to begin to understand like where they can find, you know, some of those tensions, and bring them back to, you know, sort of more present day stuff. Does that make sense?
No, thanks. That did. It reminded me of this tension between the real and the unreal, and how when you're grounded in some notions of reality, it then allows you to really speculate really well. Like if there is some basic sense of what the real is.
Yeah, there's I hope I get this right in my mind, but that like Deleuze and Guattari talk about the virtual, right? And what do they point to? They point to, I think, like Adorno, Bergson, where it says like the virtual is an opposite of the real. It's opposite of the possible. If that makes sense. So it's like it's something that kind of potentially can be possible. We just haven't seen it yet. But also I think when we're engaging these processes as like, because we're all designers too, like us three, we're also, you know, we're in the industry a little bit. In the process of making, and in that way, it is also about prototyping and research through design. So it's like we're constructing these things and certain artifacts, and those give us like connections to implications, right? Like if we go like through actor network theory or more Apodoride based stuff, and that becomes like a system we can look at too, and not just like an experience in a place, but what does it mean to have these little things, and how does that make differences in a way? Misha, do you want to take us into Unreal just to, or, I mean, is that possible? I mean, I'll just like preface it with, it takes a really powerful computer, so we can't do really much. I just asked Misha if it was possible just to take us in there to take a look at it.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been, while we were talking, I was at the same time playing around with it a little bit, trying to create a scene just to give an impression of what it is. But for me personally, Unreal, I'm sorry, I'm just going to close Mozilla Hub so my computer doesn't explode as well. I think Unreal, it's a fantastic tool to do so many things, from creation of digital twins to fictional worlds, but also just creating films, special effects, movies. So this is a third-person scene. A lot of this are standard assets, some of it. The interesting thing about it is that whatever you place in the scene, it can either become, a fully physical object that you can interact with by like standing on it or bumping into it, but also you can have a range of rigid bodies to disrupt spaces or to puzzle things together, like
and
a
it's
way
like
to climb.
And Misha, this is, I mean, for me, this is also like it's kind of an implementation of like Web 3.0 in a way, where it's not just like static shapes, but everything has this sort of semantic value. Like they have their own
ID.
I mean, so they're not, so they're characters that have certain personalities and certain,
Absolutely. It is quite interesting to think how is such object described. And I think for me, a lot of the ways I work with 3D, it also shaped the way I work with artificial intelligence, is that when you look at the object, you don't only think about, I see a blue cube, but you dig deeper and you start thinking about if properties like it's a blue cube which has beveled edges, and it consists roughly of, like, due to this roundness of edges, it has like, I don't know, 500 polygons instead of 8. It has blue color that has a certain hex value. It has a certain ID in the scene. So if I stop the simulation now and I go to an asset browser, you will see how many of those properties does actually one object have. So I used Blender to create a very simple pyramid just out of fences, and I put them together through like a procedural workflow. And I think the ease with which you are able to drag and drop things in Unreal Engine and immediately modify it, but also experience it, right now, it can become something on the backdrop, right? So we can push this object outside of our scene boundaries, and then we can treat it as a, as a prop that is there just to be, aesthetic, or to hint us that there is something beyond these gray walls. But at the same time, we can push it in the scene. We can make it interactable by, for example, determining the way our character would collide with it. So right now, it doesn't have any bounds. I could probably just fly through it, but I can generate a kind of simple geometry around it, and it will take a second to process, and you will see that it will draw those this green matrix around the object, and then we will start bumping into it, and we can attempt to climb it, right? We make this object an interactable part of an environment.
And I think one of the interesting things is we had one of Misha's friends, who was a student of ours a while ago, took like our actually academy building that we taught in and created a model for it. And then it allowed us to like fly up on the top and play around in spaces we didn't, we couldn't take place in. And, it reminds me also of Cataline has a colleague who she advised in Delft, whose project was on the city seen or experienced from the viewpoint of a pigeon, right? So then we're looking at different ways that different sort of stakeholders or different perspectives can sort of, either like give us a critical way to look at our own perspectives, or sort of different ways to understand value in a way.
Yeah, totally. I'm just trying to pull in some more assets in here so we can have some fun reconstructing.
Let me share. I'm going to steal the screen for a second. Can I do that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Just because I'll show a couple other things. Just because we can. So like here is, these are images of the Mandalorian. And you can see like in the filming, there's this huge screen that's behind in the filming, and that's all generated stuff from Unreal Engine. So they're filming in the middle here, and they have this sort of generated worldview that's behind them. And so it's like, it's sort of like this feedback loop where this technology is making the mediation of our world, as well, which is a little bit weird. And another example, which I thought was which is interesting and relevant to sort of just briefly look at, is thing like the uncensored library in Minecraft. That is a library of stories and accounts of journalists that are censored in their countries. And they, it's the wrong way. Because it's made out of these, blocks in Minecraft, it can't be sort of erased in a way. I mean, I guess unless you buy Microsoft or something. So the different countries, and you can access these this content, which is forbidden to be seen in these oppressive sort of places in a way. So it's like this metaverse becomes a very kind of profound complement to what we have here in a way.
And then Unreal Engine also has a direct link to the metaverse because they're using an Ethereum API. So essentially any element that we place in Unreal can be tokenized and then minted on the blockchain to create some of those play to earn games, or a way to bring in, like Balenciaga NFTs into an Unreal environment to dress your character up. And
when you talking about NFTs and like fashion, I didn't include that in the lecture, but I have a really interesting, some interesting work from a student that just graduated of mine who works in fashion, but he's from Hungary, and his exploration was based on like the sort of terrible authoritarian like hate propaganda that takes place there, like against like homosexuals or anyone who's non-normative. But he he produces these sort of wearables in the digital world that sort of contest this normativity as a way to take like the expression of non-normativity to like the base level of the human, which is I thought to be like really interesting and sort of like a aspiration and a prefiguration in this sort of digital world in a way. Okay, should we take a little break or something? And then I'll try not to talk so much and we can play around with a couple other things. I mean, since we have a captive limited audience, I mean, how are you guys doing? What do you think about what you've seen so far?
I was trying to create my own room with a factory, but I didn't succeed. So I don't know if I have to try again.
Well, maybe when we come back, we can try to do that.
Okay.
Because I mean, I don't know. I'm just proposing it. It wouldn't be me who was doing it. So
there are different scenarios for factories. 5, 6, but so I could try to move it in this room with a factory, and I think add objects, or I don't know, because I've never tried this kind of tools. So
I think it's really interesting to think about like sort of obsolete old factories, because there are some work into photogrammetry that like represents sort of nostalgic material that is ephemeral in a way, and there's also like that digital twin city aspect where they have like really high-end industrial processes that deal with like turbines and things are really using this technology very rapidly, so there's some mix there that's really interesting, if you could use like that over datified sort of simulation in this sort of dead space in a way. There seems to be something interesting there, I think. Okay, so if everyone's okay, we'll take a little break and maybe we'll come back at, I don't know, 11:20. Does that sound 15 minutes or 10 minutes? 11:15, 10 minutes, and then we'll just do a couple fun things in the end and answer some questions and stuff. Does that make sense?
okay,
All right, see you guys in 10 minutes.
10 minutes. Okay.
Oh, people, I'm a minute early, I think here. There was one other, or I just want to show a couple tiny things real quick, and then I thought, I mean, our messaging wasn't working so well, but we thought that maybe then we could just help to start to set up a little factory or something.
Yeah, in-room participant is not just back yet. She was off getting a cup of coffee.
Okay, sorry. We'll let her recharge.
She shouldn't be too far off because there shouldn't be anyone else out and about from stuff just yet.
Perfect. We can show some techniques like, for instance, geometry, extrusion, or kit bashing some 3D models together.
I wanted to show Freddie's VR carpentry workshop.
Oh yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, and then I just quickly wanted to like just show the OpenAI text stuff just to generate, just to show how that can make amazing like textual generation. And then Misha, if you're down, then we can just try to see what we can set up or what you can set up, and I can pretend that I'm involved in, I guess.
Sounds good. We can use the images that you generate with AI, and I draw some geometry around it, and we put it in Unreal as a set design, and I will walk it. What do you think?
Okay, you want me to do some stuff on Dolly or on Discord on Midjourney, or
It doesn't matter. Just any image goes pretty much.
what do we? So let's see. Just while she's coming back, let's.
Catlini is voting for
Dolly.
Dolly. Yeah.
Okay, I'll just share my screen while I'm doing it so you can all see the weirdness that comes out here. Okay, what shall we do?
Textile.
And abandoned. Is it abandoned? I mean, is that how?
Abandoned.
I don't know if it'll understand like post-industrial. I can try.
I guess so. Let's see.
Industrial
Try it. I would go from her title.
factory. Oh, okay. Let's see. Deindustrialized landscapes. That you mean?
Yeah. I think it, yeah.
With a factory. We can say like something else like at dusk.
Oh yeah.
With overgrown
Do not add zombie.
grown plants.
Did you ask Ryan or Dolly? I wonder what happens if you ask
Misha,
it to not.
you
add
should
something.
see him cut images with scissors. He's so fast.
Oh, that does a pretty
Oh.
good job. That looks like
Right?
Pontiac. Oh my gosh, I think we lived in that building when we were young.
Oh, I see
That's
myself
crazy.
in the tub.
Oh my gosh.
It looks like post-apocalyptic Stripe S as well.
Yeah, like what it was before people moved into Eindhoven.
Yeah.
Or what it will look like in the future. Wow, that's pretty good. I guess it took a lot of the plants. Plant. Maybe we could take some plants
Yeah,
out.
can we do without plants, without vegetation?
No
No
what else?
vegetation.
Without vegetation.
Mhm. I don't know what her scenarios are, but I think these are the kind of, it depends how close by there still is human activity.
Do you want to do the interior? The interior.
Yeah, she was talking about textile industry or not?
Oh, okay. What?
Today.
I didn't get that.
Yeah.
Abandoned textile factory.
It's very on topic.
I didn't, what sort of visual prompts do we want? Like, photographic?
She's back in the room.
Yeah.
And ask no more questions directly.
Thank you.
AI generating some of the industrial factory things.
So we're just generating some stuff. It's pretty good. Like, we thought that we actually used to live in this building that is a fake generative thing, which is kind of creepy. Again, like, I just received an invite I was waiting to be able to use DALL-E, and I just received it like in the middle of the night. So wow, that looks like pretty good.
Yeah.
It's pretty amazing. And I think that, you know, because we make images, is always like, you wonder,
I
like,
want to rent it.
well, you have to pay for credits. It's like 10 cents every prompt.
No, I want to rent the space.
Oh, it's like the Design Academy without any floors.
Yeah. Lofty living in.
Do you want me to give you some of these images or something?
Yeah.
Or no? Are they? What? Can you?
Someone wants to rent something like that. In my fieldwork, there are plenty of these.
Yeah. So what sort of, if you can, what other like details do you envision in your? Because we did it from the outside with too much foliage, and then we.
Like the first one on the left.
This?
Yes.
Okay. That completely looks like it. Like, we used to live in the first car factory of GM that was built in 1919. It looks just like that. And with all the vegetation too. Okay, let me see. Shall we generate some variations on it? So I'm not controlling it at all. Like, you can add lots of stuff and you can submit images. I'm not doing a great job with like prompting. I'm just letting it sort of go out in a tangent with these variations, which it doesn't ever really do what you want to do. I'm just sort of trying.
I think it's very interesting how, by using artificial intelligence, if you are used to image making, you have to immediately, like, how do you find your own handwriting, or how do you curate?
Maybe there never is.
You know?
Maybe we're only fooled into thinking that things that come out. I mean, that's sort of what my research is like, that humans and their material production have like this bias that we just do the same little things all the time. I mean, Catalan does experiments with like the Rob, like the robot that draws, and she gives it instructions, and then, you know, has like that artwork in museums.
Yeah, and I'm just keep going back to basic Gestalt principles. So I'm basically just choosing compositions. I think even in these generators that look like the ones that I would make myself. So they're always.
I think it's awesome that you know, we the way that those algorithms work, you know, sometimes, you know, it's almost similar how our brain works, maybe at the moments when we're, I don't know, not fully conscious or not, you know.
It's like if I was to say you had to draw, or even in your mind imagine like a factory like that, your idea of that is still based on similar things, right? It's based on your experiences of factories and all that you've seen in movies and stuff like that. Okay, anyways, I'm just showing this project because I think it's really interesting. This is another student of ours that we guided in Catalan pretty closely, because Catalan does work in these like simulations of workshops. So Freddie was traditionally trained as a carpenter, and then, you know, he became a more digital designer. And for his graduation project, he made this experience called Virtual Craft, which he made a very detailed VR experience simulation of actually working in a carpentry studio. Can you hear that sound? Is that no? Let me I'll tell you what. Well, I guess it's kind of funny. See if I can just do it. You can hear it now a little bit, probably. So began as like, what could you replicate it, you know? And he really has this very detailed sort of simulation of specific things that you have to do and can't do, you know, as a carpenter. You have to plane the wood and cut it. And so here's like footage of actual carpenters using it and giving them feedback.
It's not only just a carpenter, it's his former teacher. So he's
Is like
teaching his.
right under. So it's like these, I always find these things really funny because it's like, what are they doing? But they're engaging in this really like specific professional task. And what began as like this sort of, you know, open exploration, like, can I even do it? Now the guild, or like what is it? The professional union like of carpenters in Germany, like wants to use it to attract younger people, because younger people, you know, can get in it through like the VR experience in a way. I thought that was super fun. Okay, we just one last thing I want to just show is like the textual thing. Just so y'all have seen it. You know, just take a second. So of course, like the beginning of, or at least what we could touch in AI frameworks, you know, in the beginning was mostly textual. And so OpenAI that does DALL-E also, you know, it has a bunch of textual ways that it can generate things. And these are just examples. And it's kind of, let's see, interview questions. So it's just this. So let's change it. Create a list of 8 questions from an interview with a squatter in an old building. And so then it you know can generate pretty interesting, sophisticated ways to look at things. We can also I don't know all these by heart, so let's have it make a little story. So the structure is like topic, ban.
Why not deindustrialization?
Oh. Abandoned. What am I doing? I can't spell today. How to do this? Anyone can give me a. Oh wait, sorry, that's the output. Right, I think it's like that. And you can, you know, I can change the length so it makes a much more wordy one. We'll use some more tokens here. Topic: abandoned factory that comes to life. It's kind of a very wordy story. But you know, and I'm not controlling, again, and I'm not controlling it super well here. But you can, geez, you can really, why isn't I'm having a hard time pasting this in there. Anyways, so it can do lots of things. I'm always amazed at the different stuff it can do. It can also like write code, right? Like scripting code. You can explain it what you want it to do, and it can generate like a piece of code, like a Python script and stuff for you. So it here, this is a good thing for. Okay, I won't mess around anymore because I'll just take up time and just entertain myself, I think.
I think it is quite interesting to see how you can use different aspects of such AI to have it generate the text prompt, to then generate imagery from it, to then, you know, create a Python script to make it interactable.
Yeah,
For
what
example,
about-
it seems
can you
like a full.
Can you
full
show a
load
couple
script.
of the stories that you post on Instagram, those AI generated stories that are really weird and
Yeah, it's a bit. It's
And
a bit of a
they're
trick.
beautiful, Misha.
yeah, they're super nice.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, totally. It's a story. Well, I wanted to kind of reflect on. I wanted to create a comic that is generated by AI, and I wanted to be very self-centered because then it felt a little bit more honest somehow. Yeah, I've been playing around with GAN and image generation for maybe a year or so, and then Ryan invited me to a beta test of this awesome service called Midjourney, which is somehow similar to Dolly, the thing he was sharing before. But the thing that you see with those AIs is that people use it a lot to create very extravagant imagery or something very distant from reality. And I was interested in how can you create something extremely mundane? How can you explain to like control the property of AI to yeah, just by using text prompt to create something, you know, a story about nothing, something really something that happens in ordinary life. So then I try to explain to AI how do I look, you know, so it would portray me, and it's a very funny process because then you start to reflect, okay, so how do I actually look? And it's almost like you explain it to someone, you know, who like your pen pal who asks you, so like, how old
Yeah,
are you?
it says in some of those like guides, like think about explaining something to like a second grader. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you have to be like really overly clear. And so it is kind of funny, right? You have to like reverse engineer what you want a little bit.
Exactly. And then it comes to you as a character, but it also comes for the environment. So how do I explain to AI, how does my local supermarket look like? Or what is a generic supermarket? What kind of products do I want to see on the background? And then especially this contrast between background and foreground in image generation to build a kind of composition just based on text. That's what I found to be very very interesting. How do you explain an action of like hands grabbing a beer out of the fridge? You know, how do you like, because I'm used to working in 3D programs, there you have complete control over how do you position a character, a camera, how do you light it, and then having to translate all of that knowledge in image making into a text prompt that was super fun. That's a different one.
I think it
Yeah.
points out nicely why in design courses, speculative design and critical thinking and critical reflection go hand in hand. It's like we were preparing ourselves for this to come.
Yeah, totally.
You pay so much more attention to detail. It's really great.
Yeah, but also I think it's if you are a designer or an artist working with such technology, you know, it is so easy to kind of fall into the pattern of you know, just constantly experimenting but not really reflecting, you know what I mean? So for me, this reflection process of being like super aware of what I am actually doing and generating and how does it, you know, influence my practice and what does it mean for me now, but also like in 10 years when this technology becomes more and more advanced, how do you then position yourself as an image maker, and how can you also hack and abuse this technology to you know, to solve your, you know, current
and
design.
one of the things that that is really helpful to just to like wrap that point up is that we we see some of these technologies as like enabling sort of like a sense of cognitive apprenticeship, where we can have people that aren't professionals produce things like digital materials or actual material stuff at a level that they don't have to be experts, but it moves right back into like the contemporary world. And so, I mean, in the past, where if you want to deal with municipality or people who weren't, used to that sort of those sort of skills, there would be a lot of like bias and a lot of problems with like making that sort of vision. But now there's so many tools that it's like you can allow people to engage in creating that world, like
it potentially makes it a lot more inclusive.
Yeah. Even like from meme generators and stock photos and stuff, it's like we already have like a competency that we understand how these things work. We're like over the time here. But Misha, did you already put something in there that I see? I mean, we don't have to.
I think, well, it's not really substantial, but I think when the stuff becomes really interesting with AI generation is especially at the point when it becomes transmedial somehow. So when we stop treating it as the final outcome per se, but rather, we find ways how to bring those amazing elements to life. Wait, where is this?
It's like every single like representation we use is like fixed with lots of strings to other things. And so it's like using this operational representation, that is, it's like participating in the world by using these things that exist. And the interesting part about like it always having like a contingent meaning.
And I think,
do you two wonderful participants or our very helpful tech person have any questions or anything that you feel like you'd like to express or ask or anything like that? Okay, I'd say maybe that's a no,
or I see that our
There are tech issues with
spaces are-
Teams and projector.
okay.
Maybe it was maybe there was a time.
Maybe I can just make one small comment. Like I
Sure,
thought,
please.
These were really illustrative, and I want to find out ways to explore questions that I have vis-a-vis, things that I'm interested in. And is there a repository of projects that you think I could like just skim through, or anywhere? I mean, I could always email you if that's all right to
Sure.
speak.
Yeah, I mean, please. Yeah, I mean, it's especially since there's only two of you. It's like, please, like, and
Yeah.
I think it's important. I mean, there's so much out there that I think that it depends a little bit, like what sort of context do you bring it into?
Which angle you take and
I mean, because if you're just interested in like the VR or like the simulation part, or if it goes into specific content, but I think that we'd definitely be able to like, direct you or
I guess to be more specific, I'm really trying to think about non-capitalist relationships in the world, especially in New York. It's a city which is known to be the heart of capitalism, so to speak. But here there are people trying to build other ways of producing things. It could be, as opposed to say the idea of a factory, right? And what would be the polar opposite of, existing models of production, for example, like.
But you can look at example like the Public Lab, right? Which is a open source initiative that started like in the Gulf states, where when there was this oil spill by BP, the government didn't give out aerial photos because they were biased, obviously, and didn't want to see how bad it was. And so like one of the things the Public Lab did is it developed this sort of crowdsourced project where people took balloons and kites and put their tiny cameras on them and then shot lots of images, and then they compiled them to see what was going on. So, you're creating like a a sort of a digital representation that wasn't available because of like centralization and power structures. I mean, there's like air quality, things like that. I mean, there's some things like that, but I think that one thing I would say is that it's difficult sometimes for me to separate like capitalism from lots of other stuff. Like, cause I mean, I also teach in like a commercial practices. And so like, we don't focus on the money, but like everything has value. And so it's, I mean, I would also say, is it about like corporate control of a process? Is it about like the monetization or something? Is it about like an increased inequality that's, you know, that's produced from something?
Right.
Because
yeah, I mean, I could just help there again. I think there are certain communities that are hyper conscious of living in a gentrified space. So they are trying to reclaim space. Like they are very highly conscious of developers coming into a neighborhood just to acquire space. And so they, actively trace out empty buildings. They have a sense of wanting to reclaim that space. That's one example of how a community is invested in taking over control over certain spaces.
Yeah, and I can imagine that from like a designer, like a development sort of perspective, then I think you could begin to look at, when things become smart or they become, represented in different ways, or we can mediate them, or you can also turn the technologies against like the sort of hegemonic force in a way, where it's like we can over surveil what's happening there or something. I think it's really like contextual and relative sometimes. So it's hard to, it really depends on lots of.
There is also, I think, a lot of power in low tech in kind of this, approach to reclaiming the space. There's this German artist with Russian roots living in Amsterdam. His name is Dmitry van den Wittenboer. And it's just a guy, but I really like what he does. He finds spaces in the areas where there's a lot of social housing around, and then he creates social spaces out of them where they can become like creative studios for children, or then he invites all of the locals, like a lot of people that are going through like reintegration into society after being institutionalized for a while. And then they create all of those artistic practices around it, like a music parade in the local market, or a soup kitchen, and he invites expats from all over the world to come and like teach people how to cook like international meals. And it's very participatory in that regard, and very like no money.
And we've done like at the Willem de Koning here in Rotterdam, we've done speculative Catalan, actually it's spearheaded like a lot of this projects with students where we work with the municipality and look at things like circularity, right? And then we come up with like proposals that touch on these sort of things. So also developing whole new ideas of how like spaces and humans connect in a way. I think like land developers and people who have power really need to move like pragmatically in a linear way. And so it's our power a little bit to like supersede that and already come up with better ideas that sort of take the precedence. So like there were a lot of like ideas about micro gardens that people could share. There was stuff even about like separation from parenting and things like that like just different models of things. So I think in some way it's like the ability to use like speculation in a really outlandish way. That's on. That's on.
Maybe you as a host can mute.
Yeah. I'm not the host. Okay,
thank you.
Chat. I just lost completely what I was saying.
Saying using speculation in outlandish ways.
Yeah, so it's like our superpower a little bit to be able to entertain that and employ that. It's like not possible to do that very often for like a land developer, so it's like it's really our ability to think outside of those and to really like recontextualize and change how, what we like can see in that future, because I think like that's the power, right? I mean, it's like if something is already being used in a different way, or it already indicates a different value, you can't like wipe that away, in some sense. I don't know if that makes sense either, but
it did to me a lot, because even with I think it would be very valuable for anthropologists too, because we are often so fixated with what is real and what is out there, and then speculation just takes a backseat, or the imagination and its use for us it becomes very rote, and we try to follow what was there before. So I'm really fascinated, and
and especially with tools, it's like, because it's also tool, everything becomes really deterministic, and so we're all using these same systems. So it's, I don't know, I guess it's what we do also, like professional wise, is like to really challenge and to abuse like these processes in a way to come up with new perspectives. But I think all of us would be very welcome and happy to help you either of you wonderful participants. If you have questions, you can shoot us a group email or whatever, and we can, if that's something. But I really appreciated you two coming. It would have been disappointing if no one came. We'd feel a little bit bad, maybe, but yeah. Thank you. And thanks a lot to Misha and Cataline, because I sort of spoke a lot, and they also do a lot of really important stuff. So as Cataline is currently doing.
I thank you. I received many inputs, so I began to to do on my computer, and I
Great.
think there will be so much time to practice.
Great. And just the last thing I said, I didn't touch on like some more sensitive stuff, but I also have like students that like use material contexts. Like one student dealt with porn titles and decontextualized them, and she created ways to like contest those narratives in that sort of material structure too. So like resemiosis, like taking objects and forcing us to like misuse them, for me is also speculation. It's like, it's like the material, like the way that we experience certain things is normative. If we can challenge that and offer new ways, then it's like it's sort of an unknown future. So it's like different scales. Anyways, all right, I'll stop talking. Thanks a lot. Really nice, and have a good conference. I wish I was there.
thank you so much.
Okay,
All of you.
Thank you. Very nice to meet you, and
Likewise.
enjoy.
Thank you.
Bye.
and I will be in New York in a couple weeks.
Oh, all
Just
right. Sure.
to- Peace out.